day. John, come back. Where are you?
I'm in every moment. We were together. All at once. I love you, Angela.
Welcome to Superhero Cinephiles. I am half of your host, Perry Constantine, coming to you from Kagoshima in southern Japan, where we're not locked down, but, we'll see how things work out in the next few weeks.
And I am the other half of your host, Derek Ferguson, coming to you from beautiful downtown Brooklyn, where, yes, we are indeed, well, you know what? This is the United States of America. So at this point in time, nobody really knows what the is going on. If we're locked down, if we're not locked down, if we're here, should we stay at home? Should we go out? Because we just had a big thing the other day where they were saying that a bunch of people, they had to go vote in person.
That was so ridiculous.
Oh, man. Again, this is the inconsistency with this country. Either we're locked down or we're not. You can't just, make up shit as you go along, So.
And then we got the hypocritical sociopath in the Oval Office who votes by mail himself, saying that voting by mail is bad.
You know what? That character is, there. You know what? I have no words for it. I don't even complain anymore because apparently it does no good because the people who support him, apparently he's put something in the water or there's something about him that he's done cast a mat because it seems like no matter what happens, his supporters, they believe in him 100% and, they're behind him and, if he leads us all down into Armageddon, they're going to go with him. So, listen, I just go on about my day and do what I do and just pray for the best. And, because that's about all you can do now. And wait for the elections. And what's his name? He threw in the towel today.
Bernie Sanders. Yeah. In fact, I saw that just before I went to bed last night. I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah. He threw in the towel. But you know what? That was... And I hate to put it this way, but yeah, the fix was in.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, the fix was in.
The thing I thought he was doing, why he was staying in the race, and this is why I had hoped they would have had one more debate, is because my theory is he was trying to get Biden to come more to the left, to adopt more progressive ideas. So I think he was staying in for that, and I hope that he got some concessions from Biden, and that's why he chose to drop out now, as opposed to waiting until the convention or anything like that.
Yeah. So, it's the world we are living in now is, I asked Patricia the other day, I said, well, how does it feel to be living in a science fiction movie? Yeah. Really. I wake up and, I feel like I'm living in a David Lynch movie.
Yeah. So I've gotten some international attention lately because I'm not sure if you know this, but I published this article on Medium because here in Japan, they're talking about giving out stimulus money to households that have been affected by the coronavirus, people who have lost their jobs and that kind of thing. And,
cool.
Well, yeah, but then two lawmakers with the Conservative Party, which is in power, they said that foreign residents should be exempted from it, with the reasoning being that their own countries can take care of them. Meanwhile, they're not talking about giving any money to Japanese citizens who live in other countries. So I wrote an article about it on Medium, calling this out, saying that, we pay taxes here, we pay into the pension system. So when stuff like this happens, we need support too. We're not immune. We shouldn't be expected to still go out and work or expected to, starve or get evicted because our jobs have been canceled due to no fault of our own. And
now let me ask you a question, real quick. And if this isn't the proper forum to answer this question, just tell me it's not the proper forum, and we'll just go on from there. Have you ever thought about seeking citizenship there?
Yes, I have, and I've gone back and forth about it over the years. But see, the thing is, if Japan allowed for dual nationality, I would definitely apply for citizenship.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's that's pretty much what I was getting into. Do they have like a dual, citizenship?
Well, this is where it gets a little weird because technically they don't. But if you're born, if you're like a mixed race child and you have like American citizenship and Japanese citizenship from birth, then technically you're supposed to renounce one of them when you turn, I think it's 20. But here's the thing. There's no punishment if you don't renounce. Renouncing is very difficult. So a lot of people, and there's no enforcement mechanism for it. So it's like this. So people who are born with both dual nationalities, a lot of them end up keeping it unless they're forced to give it up. And that has happened in the cases of, ironically enough, one of these legislators who's against foreigners receiving aid was born in Chicago herself and is half American. Yeah. And when she ran for public office, it was found out that she had dual nationality. So she had to go and renounce her U.S. citizenship then.
And something, that's one thing I've never been able to understand, because I know that back when Trump was going full tilt boogie with the whole thing with keeping the immigrants out and everything like that, and you had a lot of senators and congressmen and stuff like that who were of Mexican descent and whose parents had come over here illegally. They was right there with him.
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute, where do you get the balls that your parents came out and you're up here backing him, saying, oh no, we ought to keep him out. They should come over. If it wasn't for the fact that your parents came over here illegally, you wouldn't be where you are now.
Well, it's the whole Uncle Tom thing, right? Where you have to prove when you're part of the minority that's been accepted by the conservative, you're like the token minority in the racist party, you have to be 10 times more racist than the white guys in the party.
Yeah.
That's what I think it is. That's why I think this legislator who is half American has been the one who started this call saying foreigners shouldn't receive any money. So anyway, I wrote this Medium post about it, and me personally, I'm going to be okay. I don't have anything to worry about, even if my job is taken off, because my girlfriend is Japanese, and if she gets the 300,000 yen a month, that's enough for the both of us to live off of. Plus, I may be getting some of the American stimulus money, but other people may not, right? So people who are immigrants in Japan but are from countries other than America, or if they don't have a U.S. bank account anymore, which a lot of people don't if they've been staying in Japan for their whole lives. So
right.
So I was mainly writing it not out of concern for myself, but out of concern for those people. And it's gotten shared all over the internet. It's gotten tens of thousands of views. And I got contacted by a radio program in Australia asking me to come on and be interviewed about it.
Really?
Yeah, and a friend of mine, his girlfriend works for NPR, and apparently he sent her the article, and she pitched it to NPR as well. So we'll see what happens with that. Maybe it'll get.
Look at you! Congratulations.
Well, I mean, let's not count any chickens, but yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, listen, I think so. Whatever, whichever way it goes. Yeah, it's, listen, any kind of recognition that you get for something that you've written, hey, listen. That's a cause to stand up and cheer. So I hope it does work out for you.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit more recognition and interviews and stuff like that. Definitely let us know. If it jumps off in that direction.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, now today, speaking of counting chickens before they hatch, kind of a good phrase to use for this episode, for these last 3 episodes of Watchmen. We've got
very good segue.
Yeah, so we got the final 3 episodes of the 9-episode limited series, and this is where everything comes together, and it all comes together really quickly because all these 3 episodes, the present day events, they basically take place in the span of one day.
One thing that I noticed while I was watching, because I watched these 3 episodes earlier today in preparation for this. One thing that I noticed that even though these are the last 3 episodes, but there's a lot of beginnings in them. We see the beginnings of a lot of things in there. We see the beginnings of Adrian Veidt, his imprisonment. Mm-hmm. We see, the beginnings of the relationship between Cal, who we find out is actually Dr. Manhattan, in that terrific episode, A God Walks Into a Bar, which has a dual meaning, That's another one of those episodes that, tells a whole lot, and we see it, and by the time we get to it, it's like, oh shit, because there is so much in there. But we're going to get to that in a minute. Let's start with episode 7, and Almost a Religious Awe. Right,
which is a great title and comes from a line that Dr. Manhattan used in the comic book when he talks about the Vietnamese surrendering to him, and how when they surrendered to him, they surrendered with an almost religious awe.
Yeah. And we see that in Vietnam. Apparently they have, I don't rightly recall, and I was even looking to see if it had an official name. I guess it's Dr. Manhattan Day.
Well, I think it's all tied in with VVN, Victory in Vietnam.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's kind of like tied in with that.
Yeah, because we see that, in the flashback with Angela, because now her memories are starting as she's going through the treatment that Lady True is putting her through to flush out the nostalgia of her grandfather, that's been in her head. Her memories are starting to surface, and is this the episode where we see the flashbacks to Vietnam when she was a little girl?
Yeah, so this is when we find out what the origin story of Sister Night is, because it was
right.
It was a 1977 movie, and the cover is awesome. It's this 1977 it was part of the subgenre called Black Mask movies. So responses or parodies to mass vigilantes in the 70s. So it's kind of like a different twist on blaxploitation. And so a lot of movies that are named in this from the PDpedia files were like The Black Superman, which we talked about right before we talked about this series. And other ones, Sister Night was one of them. Tarantula, which was, I guess, kind of like a Black Spider-Man, probably.
A Black Spider-Man, yeah.
And Batman is explicitly mentioned, so I guess that was also something that they made a Black Batman movie in this universe.
Because there's a scene we see Angela where she's a little girl and she's spinning the rack with all of these VHS tapes in it. So we get a good look at all of these different, tapes of, the movies that exist in this world.
And they've got a theme song for Sister Night. Did you know this from the PDpedia files?
I haven't read it yet. I'm waiting until we finish, and then I'm going to read it.
Okay, so it's awesome. She's got a body like an angel, 3448 brick red, but if you touch her chocolate body, your turkey ass will end up dead. She's out of sight, sight, sight. Oh, that's right. She's Sister Night, night, night. Get out of town, honky.
Written by Willie Hutch, no doubt.
And when you're eating too much coleslaw and the mayo has turned sour, Sister Night is getting stronger by the minute, by the hour.
Cool. See, now that's a movie I want to see.
This is one of the things about this is that I want to see like the movies and that are referenced in this universe. Like I want to see Steven Spielberg's Pale Horse. I want to see
definitely.
Sister Night, the nun with the motherfucking gun. I want to see Fog Dancing, the post-apocalyptic movie that features like super soldiers. And it has like kind of a similar plot to the original Watchmen comic. I want to see this stuff, and that would be a cool way to kind of continue the legacy of Watchmen if you did this kind of stuff, kind of like Tarantino did in his little universe, where Kill Bill, that was like the type of movie that people watch in his alternate reality.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And he always throws in like these little things, as you said, with these other movies, and you end up saying, "Well, damn, I want to watch that movie. I want to see that movie." So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that's in this episode that I say, okay, yeah, well, I want to see more of that. I want to see more of that, and as I said, I made a post earlier on in Superhero Cinephiles where I said that as I've been watching this, the one thing that has really impressed me about the storytelling of this series is that, yeah, there's a lot of world building that's going on, but never once does the story stop dead in the water and sacrifice the story and characterizations just for the sole purpose of world building.
No, I mean, this is a masterclass in world building. And you know what all these little intros, at least little asides, remind me of? You remember Grindhouse, the full uncut version with both the movies back to back, and they had all those fake movie trailers spliced into it. That was one of the best parts of that movie, and that's why I made sure to, when I bought Grindhouse, I ended up, because in America, I don't think they had like a full uncut version of Grindhouse on DVD.
No, they split them up into two. They split it up into Death Proof and
But in Japan, they released like a 6-disc set, and
oh my god!
So it had both Planet Terror and Death Proof had their own discs, but they also had another disc which was all of them cut together.
Yeah, I would kill just to have a disc with it. I was lucky enough that, of course, I went to the movie theater and I saw it.
Yeah, so did I.
In its full uncut, glory. And I do have, Death Proof, and I have the other movie. I have them, like on separate discs. But I would like to have the whole experience on one single disc, as it's originally supposed to be presented. But, that was an experiment that was like really, and you know what? I appreciate what Tarantino and Rodriguez was trying to do, because they was trying to give people the flavor of how it was going to the movies during the 1970s. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people just didn't get it. A lot of people didn't understand it. And I don't think that they made it clear enough, to the audience. Because, they had to put up signs and stuff like that telling people, well, you're going to see, parts of the movie that are going to drop out, and you're going to see this and that. It's all part of the movie. And people just didn't get it. They said, well, I don't understand, so, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that that's one of the things that I really like about this. That was a good example of using world building in a way to enhance the story, and they do something similar here with all these little asides. And I just love that cover of the Sister Night movie, and that just made me want to see that movie so bad. Oh
yeah. That's a definite vintage, VHS Grindhouse movie, cover. Definitely.
Yeah, and so in this episode, we find out that, and Angela, she does this kind of little dance with the shopkeeper, where she always tries to buy the videotape, and he tells her, he's like, they're not going to let you watch it, and she's like, oh, it'll be fine. He's like, I'll be here when you have to bring it back.
Yeah.
And then she goes, she finds her parents, and she's hiding the tape behind her back, and they're like, what do you have there? And she shows them the tape, and they just kind of laugh, and they're like, because they've gone through this so many times before.
Yeah. You get the feeling that they've done this dance plenty of times.
Yeah, and but see, the thing is, the reason they refuse to let her watch it isn't because of what you think. It's not because of the violence or the language or the sex or anything like that. It's because it portrays a masked vigilante in a positive light. Because her father was the son of Hooded Justice, Will Reeves, which we saw in the last episode.
Right.
And later, when she meets her grandmother, we find out why he's got this, because there was that scene when he was putting on the Hooded Justice makeup, and Will got mad at him and kind of lashed out at him, and then that was when June left him.
Yeah, she left him and she said, "Yeah, this thing is kind of like taking you over, and you're gonna, and again, it was such a brilliant episode because you could see both sides of it, and you could see the growing frustration that Will had at being hooded justice, because he thought that he could make a difference being a police officer. He couldn't make a difference being a police officer. So then he thought he could make a difference being hooded justice, and he couldn't make a difference being hooded justice. So, the frustration was eating him alive, really.
Yeah. And then so then she takes the type and she's about to go back to the store, and then she sees this this Dr. Manhattan puppeteer who's got like a scarred face, and he gives a backpack to this guy on a bicycle. And the guy rides towards Angela's parents, and he shouts "Death to the invaders" and sets off a bomb. And it's intercut with the shots from Will's past, seeing the Klansmen in Tulsa, killing all these people in Tulsa. And,
right.
And I thought that was a brilliant way of intercutting it, because it's showing that, the Vietnamese people, they've been oppressed, but this guy, by turning to terrorism, he's kind of become exactly like the oppressor. I thought that was a neat little juxtaposition they did.
Yeah. I mean, visually, they didn't have to use a whole lot of words to spell it out. They use the visuals to, and if you're paying attention, you'll get it. Yeah.
So
I agree. Yeah, that was an excellent way to do that.
And then Angela is now orphaned. She's living in a Vietnamese orphanage where they only speak Vietnamese to her. And then one day, first there's a cop who comes by, right? And they ask her to identify the guy in the back, and she says, "Yeah, that was him." And then the female cop, Jen, she talks to her for a little bit, and she gives Angela her badge, and she says, "When you're older, come see me."
Yeah, because when she identifies the guy, the woman stays with her, and the male cop, Roy, he takes the guy, the terrorist, and he takes him around the corner, and the female cop tells Angela, "Okay, well, you can go back inside now." She said, "Nah." She said, "I want to hear." And like the female cop gives like this little smile, like, "Yeah, okay, I like you, kid." And that's why, that's when she gives her the badge and say, "Yeah, when you grow up, you come see me."
And then you hear a gunshot in the background.
Yeah. So that there was swift justice administered. They was not taking him back to book him.
Absolutely, yeah. And then so then Angela's grandmother, June, she comes to the orphanage, and she kind of she takes Angela out of there, and she says, "Well, I'm your grandmother. I'm here to take you back with me." And this is another clue to how the world has changed, because the restaurant they go to is called Burgers and Borscht.
Yeah.
So after Veidt's scheme to drop the squid, apparently there's been a lot of cooperation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. So now there's even a chain U.S.-Soviet restaurants around.
Well, to an extent, his plan did work to, bring all the nations together and unify them. Because like you said, when you look at that flag of the United States that's got the circular stars, and there's a whole bunch of stars in there. So apparently there was a lot of other countries that afterwards they up and they joined, the United States. I imagine they probably said, "Okay, well, you know what? We're all going to become one big happy democracy." Because I don't know exactly how many stars that's in there, but it's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. And so then Angela tells her story. June tells her about herself, that he left to join the army, and then I never saw him again until they told me that he had died. And so then that's when she came over. So Angela's being taken away by her grandmother, and you think it's like this big happy reunion. She's going to move to Tulsa. She's going to live with her grandma. She's finally going to get to watch the damn movie. And then and she drops dead of a heart attack right after she puts Angela in the back seat.
Yeah, right on the spot. I'm sitting there, I'm saying, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
I said, this kid cannot catch a break.
No. And that goes back to what we talked about in the last episode, Laurie's comments about why vigilantes wear masks, and it's to hide the trauma. And we see here, Angela's got a whole lot of trauma in her life.
More trauma than any one person should have had, because of course now she sees her parents get blown up right in front of her practically. She does. She sees her parents get blown. Then she has then when it looks like her life is going to change, it's going to turn the corner, it's going to be rosy and happy. Oh, she's got family and this and that, blah, blah. And the grandmother drops dead, which of course ties into later on when Dr. Manhattan, he says to Will when he goes to visit him, and he tells him, yeah, well, that's why she keeps saying that she doesn't want to have family. And we see why now she doesn't want to have family. But then he says, but that's the one thing she really desires more than anything else.
Right.
Is to have family. Because just like all of the great superheroes in literature, most of their trauma involves their parents being taken away from them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she had to deal with it, not only her parents, but her grandmother too.
Yeah, so Angela is just following in that tradition of superheroics where, your trauma is that your parents are taken from you.
Right. Yeah. And,
in a violent manner.
Yes, yeah. And then in the modern day, Angela wakes up and she finds that she's undergoing some sort of treatment. And I love Lady True in this episode when she wakes up and she's like, I'm going to explain this to you again for like the fifth time.
Yeah, she said, oh yeah, this is the part where you ask so and so and so and so again.
And then she said, and this is the part where then I inject you with the tutorial. And she's like, don't. And when she wakes out, she's like, don't ever fucking do that again. She's like, yeah, you said that last time too.
Yeah, you said that the last time. Yeah. And again, I just love the way that she has, like I said, she has like this casual arrogance about her that, yeah, okay, yeah, I know, yeah, okay, yeah, fuck you, yeah, whatever. Here you go. And she just injects her, knocks her out again. Yeah, whatever.
Now, did you notice the logo for Lady True's company? The big stylized T?
Yeah.
Do you know what it looks like?
A uterus?
No, an elephant.
What?
Yeah, it looks like an elephant.
An elephant. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
And she's got like this thing for elephants, basically. Is this thing that is like the running joke throughout the series. And then so Angela's her treatment is coming from this spinal fluid or whatever connected to a natural host in the next room. And she thinks it's her grandmother or grandfather.
She thinks it's her grandfather, yeah, because she keeps saying, oh, I want to talk to him, And Lady True says, no, that wouldn't be a good idea right now. You can't talk to him. And actually, that's what I thought it was, too, because we haven't seen the old guy.
Right.
And that would only make sense. Okay, yeah, well, they would hook him up so that, they would siphon off his memories and put it back into him. Yeah, so that makes sense.
And then she goes and she follows the cord and she breaks into the room and she finds this elephant that she's connected to.
Because the elephant never forgets.
An elephant never forgets. And also, you know what else about that is they never really explain in the episode why they used an elephant, because they never addressed the elephant in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got that. Yeah. That's why they never explained it. Because, you know what? Because while we were watching it, Patricia said, well, what was the elephant for? She said, doesn't matter. She said, why not? Because nobody ever explains the elephant that's in the room. Nobody, it's just the elephant in the room. And she said, oh, okay. She said, okay, I got it now. I said, yeah.
Just like Lube Man.
Yeah. Love Luke.
I love that guy. Yeah. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the nostalgia drug they use here, because this is something we kind of touched on in the past, and I think this was a really cool thing they used, because Lady True explains that when she designed the drug, she used it for people to recover from traumatic events, or for people who have lost their memory through like disease to be able to recover their memories. And what ended up happening is people were abusing the drug, because even in traumatic memories, they wanted to go back and relive them as opposed to moving on with their lives and improving their lives.
Right.
And Sorry.
Or else, like Angela was doing, they were taking other people's, they were, living vicariously through other people's, memories or whatever.
Right. Which is such a great commentary on not only comic book fandom, but society in general, I thought.
Because I'm pretty sure that in the world of Watchmen, there's a black market where you can get like a bottle of, like Brad Pitt's nostalgia memory. Yeah. And you can buy those on the black market. And you can, take them and you can live vicariously as, Brad Pitt, when you take a pill. I'm pretty sure that there's something going on like that. Because, us being human beings, anything like that, we're going to find out a way to abuse it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just thought that was such a brilliant touch they threw into that episode. And so, cutting back to Laurie Blake and Petey. Agent Petey goes to Looking Glass's apartment, or his house, and he says that I can't find him. But, I don't think he's 7th Cavalry. And Laurie has some why. It's like, because I'm seeing a bunch of dead 7th Cavalry guys in his house.
And, yeah, which of course, is our first clue that, because all we saw the last time, we just saw this, we just saw the guys going into Looking Glass's house, and we just assumed that he got killed because we never seen him again. But this is our first clue that, he survived. He killed them all and got away, yeah.
So this is the first hint that we get, really, that Looking Glass is a pretty dangerous guy himself.
Oh, yeah.
Because, we haven't seen him fight at all. He's just been doing interrogations and that kind of stuff. But here, we see the aftermath of his fight with there's like a dozen of them or something, right? And
he has jacked these cats up.
Oh, yeah. And he stole one of their masks.
They did not die well.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it that way. They did not die well.
And then Laurie goes to meet Jane Crawford, Judd's wife, widow now. And there's this great scene where they're sitting there talking, and Laurie lays out her theory all about it, that she thinks that Senator Keene is working with the 7th Cavalry, that she's using them to manipulate them so that he can get the police to wear masks, and then eventually use this as a platform for running for president.
Because of course, Laurie has put it together that the 7th Cavalry is actually Cyclops.
Right.
The organization that Will Reeves was battling against in New York during the 40s, the white supremacist organization, they have metamorphosed into, this other organization. And actually, it's a front for the real organization, which apparently is a bunch of, as we see later on, it's like a bunch of business people and politicians and stuff like that. But can I say one thing about that scene? Mm-hmm. With Laurie and Jane. Okay, as much as I love Laurie, and as much as I love her, you know what? I kind of got a little bit of pleasure out of seeing somebody finally, take her down a peg. Because she's been walking through the whole show, smart ass and everybody, and she's 2 or 3 steps ahead, and she's so, she knows what's going on, and you can't put one over on her. And Jane Crawford puts one over on her, For once in the show, Laurie is not 2 steps ahead. She's actually 3 steps behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that too. And Laurie's probably one of my favorite characters in this show. But that was brilliant how they did that, and how Jane just is so casual about it. She's got that same kind of casual arrogance that Laurie has and Lady True has, and it's just. And she just kind of oh, yeah, that was the original plan. She's oh, was I not supposed to confess now?
Yeah, she said, was I not supposed to? And Laurie's and see, that's why, because Laurie's just sitting there dumbfounded, huh? What do you mean? And then, of course, she uses the oldest gag in the book to trap her. She drops her down a trap door. But
when she hits the button the first time, nothing happens.
Yeah, it only goes bum. And Laurie says, what the hell is going on? And it's like this old-fashioned remote control from the 1950s, which, again, is a commentary on how old this trap is. They was doing this thing in 1930 serials. They were dropping people down trap doors. That's why I love that. That's, oh, my God. When was the last time you saw somebody got dropped down a trap door?
Yeah. Oh, it was great. and I just love the way that it's failing because it's so old and it hasn't been used in years.
Yeah, it hasn't been. She hasn't used this thing in years. Because, like I said, the remote control is like from the 1950s. Mm-hmm. This thing hasn't been used, and she actually whacks it. She said shit, and she whacks it to the side and presses it again, and then it works. and we just hear Lori go, and she's cussing and everything like that. And Jane Crawford goes and looks down at her, and then she makes a phone call and says, "Yeah, I got it. You want me to kill her?" Oh man, great scene.
And then Joe talks to her, Joe Keane, and tells her his plan was originally to use to become president, but when he found out that Dr. Manhattan was alive. And on Earth, he decided he was going to try to steal his powers because he said, well, it's so hard to be a white man in America nowadays, so I thought I'd try being blue.
Okay, here we go.
And so then we've got, and then back at Lady True's clock tower, Angela gets out and she finds the Dr. Manhattan booths, like all these recordings Lady True has been making of these messages people think they're sending to Dr. Manhattan. And she tells them that about the 7th Cavalry's plan. And she says that I want to stop them because can you imagine all that power in the hands of a white supremacist? And she says that Dr. Manhattan is not on Mars, he's here in Tulsa. And then Angela leaves, and right before just as she's about to leave, Lady True says to her, you didn't ask who he is. Right? He says, you didn't, I just told you Dr. Manhattan is in Tulsa, and you never asked me who he is.
And you never asked me who he was, yeah.
And that was the moment when like, oh shit, now it's Cal.
Yeah.
That was the moment when I was like, okay, yeah, it's definitely Cal now.
Yeah, which actually, you know what? I had suspected it up to, but then I said, nah, that's misdirection.
Right.
That's, because, but yeah, in the next episode, a guy walks into a bar. Yeah, we do. As a matter of fact, we get the whole history of the relationship between Angela and Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, and there was another clue, apparently, I found out. So, do you know what the name of the Dr. Manhattan vibrator was?
No.
Excalibur.
Oh, okay.
Excalibur.
Excalibur. Oh. Very clever. Okay.
I know, yeah. I love how they do these little things on that. And so then she goes back to her house, and she confronts Cal, and she takes a hammer out. And she explains to him, I love you, you're my best friend, and he says, you're not acting like yourself. And she says, no, John, you haven't been acting like yourself.
You haven't been acting like yourself, yeah.
And then she whacks him in the head.
I mean, viciously. And we say, oh, shit. What happened now? And she cracks his forehead open.
Mm-hmm. And then she's rummaging around in her brain, and she pulls out this device that looks like Dr. Manhattan's symbol. And then as she's holding it, there's this blue glow over her face. And there's this great... The cinematography in this is... I've said it before, but it's so amazing the way they structure all these shots here. Because they get this close-up on her face, and in the reflection in her eye, you can see Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I noticed that today when I was watching it. You have to look at her eyes, because you look in her eyes and you see, that Cal turns into Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. And then over on in the vape story, he's on trial by the game warden for his crimes, the squid attack, and also because of all the Phillips and Crookshanks he's killed. And we find out, this past year, he's been on trial.
Yeah, the whole year, because they said, oh, well, this is day 365 of the trial. I said, holy shit. And then, but something? That makes you reevaluate the whole time structure of what you've seen before.
Right.
You have to go back and you say, okay, because initially where you thought that all of these incidents were happening at the same time. No, they're not.
Yeah.
Because then it goes back to that other episode that we were talking about where Lady True, she goes outside and she sees the rocket, coming in and lands on her prop. That's the rocket bringing
Adrian Butt. Yeah.
Right, her father back from Europa. So now when you see this, you have to say, okay, well then this all happened way prior to what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
All of the scenes that took place on Europa, that took place a long time before, what we're seeing is happening now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and you know something? They do it without the benefits, because usually, like in most TV shows, they will tell you when it's a flashback or this happened, so and so and so. They don't do that here. They leave it up to you to figure it out.
Yeah, they leave it all open to you to try and piece together. And again, it's the amount of balls this show has, and the amount of trust it places in the audience to put these things together on their own. You don't see that in a lot of TV shows.
Well, it treats us with intelligence. It says, you know what? You're smart enough to figure this out. We don't have to, and I know that I get this from people all the time. Well, I want to know this, and I want to know that, and I want to know this, and well, listen, you know what? Can't you figure some shit out for yourself?
I hate when people do that and they just want everything explained out. Look, you've got an imagination, right? Use it for once.
Yeah, what's the fun of watching it if every single thing is laid out for you?
Mm-hmm.
And as we have said before, and we said many times, I'll say again, we could probably do another show next year about these same episodes and come up with completely new stuff that we've seen.
Oh yeah, all absolutely.
Over again, that's how much detail is in it, and that's how cleverly the story is told.
Mm-hmm. And so then this week, and then the game warden. So it's the Crookshanks lawyer. She lays out this entire closing statement, accusing
quite brilliantly, I might add.
Yeah. And then the game warden asks Veidt for his closing statement, and Veidt just stands up, looks really sincere, and then he lets a fart rip.
Yeah.
And then he just says the defense rests.
The defense rests and sits back down.
And the game warden says that the Phillips and Crookshanks, they cannot judge him because he needs to be judged by a jury of his peers.
And they're not his peers. Yeah.
So then they bring in a bunch of feral pigs, and he picks one of them up, and it's squealing, and the game warden says, "Guilty!" Oh, man.
It reminded me of one of those a scene that you would see in, what was that movie I was thinking of when I saw that? The Ruling Class with Peter O'Toole.
Okay.
Where they had those bizarre, absurd scenes like that took place where he thought he was Jesus Christ and he was walking around. I actually expected somebody to break out in the song at some point during this. That's how crazy the scene was getting. I said sooner or later it's going to turn into a musical.
Mm-hmm. And then that leads into the next episode, which is my favorite title of the entire series, and that's A God Walks Into a Bar, which could be, and they did it in, if you look on the iTunes credit listing, it's spelled A bar, two separate words. But in the show credits, and the opening titles in this, I love the way they do the opening titles, right?
Yeah, if you look at the episode and you see the title, because Dr. Manhattan, he walks through the titles. A bar is all one word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not two words, just one word.
And this is, this shows like just how amazing Yahya Abdul-Mateen of an actor is, because he's doing this, playing Dr. Manhattan, and they don't show his face in these flashback scenes in Vietnam. Right, and he goes into this bar and he finds Angela there drinking, and it's VVN day. So all these people are dressed up as Dr. Manhattan. They're wearing Dr. Manhattan masks. So he wears a mask himself. He's wearing a Dr. Manhattan mask over his Dr. Manhattan face.
Over the Dr. Manhattan face, yeah. Which even Angela says at one point, that don't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Which, like, so you're Dr. Manhattan, so why are you wearing a mask? Like, well, because I don't want to be recognized.
Which shows that apparently Dr. Manhattan has more of a sense of humor than we thought. Mm-hmm. Also, and you know what? There's one thing I could never get over. Dr. Manhattan apparently is a very horny cat.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think because I was thinking this as they started this episode, and I'm like, wait, okay, so he approached Angela, and then he also, he had Janie, and then he also went after Lori, and then I'm thinking, like, man, this is a lot like Zeus. And then Angela goes and mentions it. She's like, is this a Zeus thing? Right,
yeah. She said, because Zeus was always going down to Earth and getting laid, and left and right, which pissed off Hera to no end, So because Dr. Manhattan gets laid more than anybody else in the comic book and in TV series. He does.
In fact, there's this graph I saw, a pie chart. What causes the most problems in Greek mythology? And it's like hubris is a small part of the graph. Fate, prophecy that couldn't be avoided, is another small part. Some god threw a hissy fit because a human was better than them, another small part. And then like 90% of the graph, Zeus couldn't keep it in his pants.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, every time you turn around, I said, wait a minute, this guy's getting laid every time. For a guy that's supposed to be so far removed above humanity, he sure has no problem with indulging in the most primal of human, desires.
Well, you know what I think it is? I think it's that's the human part of him that still wants love, right? Because that's the one thing he can't create for himself.
Yeah, good point. Actually, he can create everything else, but he can't create love.
Right, and he can create worshipers, right? Like he created Phillips and Crookshank in order to, so that they would care for other people more than themselves. And he found it was very hollow, right? And so he's always seeking out these relationships, but because of the way he perceives the world and the way he perceives time, those relationships never work out the way he wants them to.
And this episode, I'm glad you mentioned that, because this episode does an excellent job of portraying the way that Dr. Manhattan perceives time, which, being only human, if you think about it too long, it'll actually drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Because he's existing simultaneously. So, matter of fact, there's a great scene where he's able to communicate through Angela with her own grandfather.
Yeah, that was amazing. And we'd never seen anything like that done before, but it makes perfect sense why they'd be able to do that.
And there's a very frightening moment in there where Angela realizes that she actually started all this shit.
Yeah.
And I just sat there. The first time I saw it, I said, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And even Cal himself says, yeah, the chicken or the egg. He said, yep, it's the chicken or the egg,
Right, yeah.
Because she says, wait a minute, did I start this? Because her grandfather didn't know nothing about Judd.
Right.
So yeah, it was the way that they use how Dr. Manhattan perceives time, because he goes and has all these conversations with different people, and even though he's telling them he knows how this is going to come out, he says, no, I have to do this because of course, since he lives in everything and all through time simultaneously, he must know how this is going to come out, but he still has to make these events happen anyway. Because they're supposed to come out. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's supposed to come out that way. So never mind.
Well, this was something in the comic book too, when and we see a replay of that in an extent, right? When Lori is with him, and he says to her, he's like, you're about to tell me that you've been sleeping with Dan Drieberg, and then she's like, well, that's why I started sleeping with Dan. And he's like, oh, you've been sleeping with Dan Drieberg? It's like, you just told me that, but he can't. He can't change his responses, right? His responses are like pre-programmed in a way. And so that same thing happens when he's talking to Angela in the bar, and he says, you're here drinking because you're mourning the death of your parents. And then later, and she's like, how'd you know that? And he's like, you're going to tell me it. And then when she tells him, he acts surprised, like, oh, your parents died? And it's just like the way that he does it. It's the way that seeing that played out in live action. And also, like, I'm not sure if they did some sort of technical funkiness or if this was Mateen's voice, but he sounds completely different when he's Dr. Manhattan in that bar versus when he turns into Kel.
Yeah, because even Angela even says, oh, well, you even sound different now.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, oh, yeah, well, he said my vocal cords relaxed. He gives us some kind of BS explanation. But, you know what? I probably think that's because they simply had a different actor doing the voice we never see his face until he goes into Cal's, he becomes, Cal.
Now, I'm not sure if that's someone else, because his voice does sound kind of similar to Mateen's, but it's just different enough. Like, I'm not sure though. Like, I'm looking on the Wikipedia page, and it doesn't mention anything one way or the other.
Another mystery for us to figure out.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like it doesn't say anything about if there was a different guy playing it or if they did some sort of technical. But if that's just his voice, like, that's amazing work.
But you're right. Something they probably could have just, because they can do that, they probably just tweaked his voice enough in post-production so that they say, okay, well, we want him to sound like a little bit off, but not too much off.
Yeah.
So it would have been easy to do. You know what? We're going to go with it's him.
Yeah. Oh, so another thing about what you said about her basically telling her grandfather and kind of starting all this. You know what? That's a time paradox, right? You know what that paradox is called?
What, the grandfather paradox?
The grandfather paradox.
Yeah, grandfather paradox.
So again, like, the way they play with language in this, and they throw in those little puns and stuff.
It's if you create a time machine and you go back in time and you accidentally kill your grandfather. Mm-hmm. Well, how did you get to be born to make the time machine?
Yeah, but I just realized that now that. She ends up. It's a twist on the grandfather paradox. Yeah, and it involves her literal grandfather.
It's a literal grandfather paradox. Yeah, because he had no idea about Judd and everything like that, and then when the realization hits her, because Dr. Man, as Cal tells her, says your grandfather said he didn't know nothing about that shit, and she says, "What?" Yeah. She said, "Wait a minute." She said, "So you mean I started all of this?" And Cal said, "Hey, the chicken and the egg."
Yeah.
What can I tell you? So, apparently they do not have Star Trek or any other time travel show or movie in the Watchmen universe, because you watch enough movies or science fiction shows, not to mess around with time.
Well, but they're not really, because they don't really realize, because Dr. Manhattan doesn't think he's messing with time. Right?
That's true, yeah.
Because he perceives it all at once. And Angela, of course, doesn't realize it.
Well, the main reason why they go through the whole process, and we see that there's a whole part where Cal, he goes to visit Adrian Veidt, who's in exile in his, big fortress up in the Arctic. And, of course, he's not surprised to see him. And Cal said, well, how did you know it was me? And he said, well, who else but Dr. Manhattan is going to walk into the Arctic, naked? It's you. And he says, well, I want a device so that, because he realizes that by him knowing everything that's going to happen, it's going to do the same thing that it's going to break his relationship with Angela the same way it broke up his previous relationships, because the women couldn't deal with the fact that, he knew everything that was going to happen before it happened. It was driving them crazy. Yeah. Okay. So he goes to Adrian Veidt and says, okay, well, I'm going to need some kind of device. Adrian says, yeah, no problem. I can hook you up. I'll do that. And Cal says, okay, well, how long is it going to take you? He says, shit, I made that thing 30 years ago. I love this guy. I made that 30 years ago.
Well, also the fact that he took on the appearance of Cal, right? And they were very specific in how they did this. She shows him dead bodies in the morgue, and she says, "Look, these people are dead. They've got social security numbers, and they've got no next of kin. So it's very easy for you to take over their identities." And he says, like, well, you pick one, and she hesitating, and he's like, unless there's another one that you haven't shown me for whatever reason. Now, and then she takes out the last drawer, which was Cal's body, and she says, I would be fine with him. And
now of course we have to, going back to addressing the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that Angela, being a black woman, why is it that she did not show him the body of the black man first? Every other body she showed him was of Caucasians.
Or Vietnamese, too, I think.
Men. You're right. I believe there was one Asian, and like the other 2 or 3, were Caucasian.
Right.
Why didn't she show him the body of the black man first?
I was wondering about that myself, and I'm still...
The question... Yeah.
What do you think? Do you have any theories about that?
I don't. Me and my wife, we watch, and of course, her being a woman, she picked up on that before even I did. She said, "Well, why didn't she pick out, the brother first?
Mm-hmm.
Why she pick, And I said, "Well, are they trying to make us?" Yeah, and we were discussing it. Me and her were discussing it. We were trying to say, "Well, are they trying to make us like some subtle comment? Did Angela just did not see race, or did she just assume that Dr. Manhattan would be more comfortable with a white body than a black body, or and we were bouncing these things back and forth trying to figure out, and we never came up with anything that satisfied us.
There were two things that came to mind for me. One of them is that Angela didn't feel comfortable picking like her perfect man, right? Like it seems a little too by design that way, and she felt a little uncomfortable making that decision. That's one theory I have. Another one, and it ties into something Vite said, is the fact that, well, here's this white guy, and you're asking him to take on the form of a black man, right?
Yeah,
literal blackface.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
and which is later what Adrian tells Dr. Manhattan when he comes to visit him. This sort of cultural appropriation isn't going to fly anymore.
You're right. Yeah. So you're right. So I was wondering, was that whole thing with, the picking out a body, was that like a subtle statement right there? Especially like you said, when Adrian made the cultural appropriation, statement. Because of course. Because also what I think too, they probably anticipated, because we've seen how smart the writers and directors have been so far, and they probably said, well, you know something? Yeah, we're going to catch a lot of flack from the fans for turning Dr. Manhattan into a black guy. So let's get a jump on them ahead, and we're going to address it.
Right.
I think that's what they did, with the cultural appropriation thing, because I'm sure you read online that a lot of people were not happy with that. Why did they have to turn him into a black guy? I'm sick of this shit. Every time I turn around, people are freaking out.
Oh yeah.
Why they turned him into a black guy? They didn't have to do that. That's a bunch of bullshit.
But now that scene where he goes to visit Adrian, like, I just love everything about that scene. Like the way their communication, their interaction with each other, it's so well done.
And you know something? Considering the fact that these are characters that we've seen in the movie played by 2 other different actors, the way that these guys play it, I totally bought that these were the same characters.
Yeah.
No, I had no issue with buying, these are the same guys.
Yeah. And so then he offers him this device. And he says that, if you don't remember you have these powers, then you won't know to use them, unless there was like a life or death or situation where it just happens on instinct, which is what happened during the White Knight, where he teleported away one of the attackers.
Right, yeah.
Which is how the 7th Cavalry ends up finding out that Dr. Manhattan is in Tulsa. And he says to him, look, I'll give you this device, but you only get it if you do something for me. And then he says, I want to, basically he says, I want to go to Europa. I want to go to a place where people will worship me, will give me the accolades that I feel I deserve.
Because frankly, he's been up there for what I think like 25 years. Mm-hmm. I think because he asked, Cal at one point. He said, "Well, how long has it been?" And he said something like 24 years, and 322 days, or something. In other words, he's been up there since the events of when he dropped the squid. He's been up there in exile, and he wants to go someplace else. And Cal says, "Okay, fine, well, I'll send you there." Mm-hmm. And boosh, he's gone.
Yeah, and then in the present day, he's adjusting to being Dr. Manhattan again, right? And he's going through these really strange motions. Like he goes out to the pool and he starts walking on water, and they're like, and the kids are like, "Who's that blue guy?" And then he looks up at them and he just waves his hand and they teleport away.
He said, "Mommy, who's the blue guy walking on?" He looks kind of like Dad. And she said, "Get away! Just get away from the window! Get away!"
And she says to him, "Why are you walking on the water?" He's like, "I have to show you this for later."
And Angela's kind of like freaking out through this whole sequence. She's just walking around, and like this is like the first time really in the whole series that we've seen her where she's not of her emotions or the situation, because she said, "Well, the 7th Cavalry, they're on their way. They're gonna come. They're gonna kill you. We gotta get away. We gotta get away." And Cal's just like, "Yeah, no, calm down. We, we're gonna take care of shit. It'll be
And he starts making waffles.
He has this inhuman calm. That we usually associate with Dr. Manhattan. Mm-hmm. Of course he's calm because he knows what's going to happen.
Right.
Angela's whole thing is, well, listen, we just got to get away. We just got to get away, and she doesn't know how, but she just knows that they got to get away.
Yeah.
Okay. He tells the kids away. She freaks out. "Well, where are the kids at?" "Well, they're with your grandfather." "My grandfather?" "My grandpa, what does he have to do with this?" And then we see there's a flashback where we see, because Adrian had told Cal, "Listen, before you put this shit in your head, take care of anything you got to take care of.
Yeah.
Because you won't remember." So then Cal goes to see Will, who is living, because apparently when Captain Metropolis passed away, he left all of his wealth and his property to Will.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough, I was kind of surprised, So, whoa. So he's living in the old mansion that Captain Metropolis used to live in.
Yeah, in the Peteypedia files, they have a copy of Nelson Gardner's will, and it says in his will, he says that I now realize, with the hindsight of time, that Will was right and I was wrong, and so I hope that giving him my estate is some way that I can begin to show how sorry I am.
Yeah, so apparently he felt bad about the whole, Cyclops incident and stuff like that. When, when Will had asked him for help and stuff like that. So this was his way of making amends. So Cal goes to see him and he's telling him, "Yeah, well, you got a granddaughter." "No, I don't have a granddaughter." "Yes, you do got a granddaughter." And he says, "Well, how do you, well, I'm Dr. Manhattan." "No, you're not Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan's a white guy and he's on Mars." And of course, Cal has to prove that he's Dr. Manhattan. And Will says, "Oh shit, you are Dr. Manhattan." So then they sit down and they have a talk,
Yeah. And when go ahead.
That is the scene where, Angela inadvertently gives Will the clues to Judge Secret, which as we found out, he had no knowledge of before.
Right.
Until the idea was given to him by his own granddaughter, which he didn't know yet.
And in the present day, too, when he's making the waffles, right, he tells Angela, "Watch out for the eggs." And the eggs float out of the refrigerator. She grabs them. She smashes them on the ground. And which is a clue for what's going to happen in the next episode.
Right. Well, yeah, when he tells her the thing about the pool and the eggs and everything, that sets everything up for, what we're going to see in, the closing scenes of the last episode.
Yeah. And then the 7th Cavalry arrives, so she starts suiting up, right? She gets ready to go to battle. And you know something I noticed here that was interesting in these last 3 episodes? She doesn't wear the Sister Knight costume anymore.
No.
Right? The masks are gone in this. And that's kind of like a commentary on how this is kind of like closing the book on Watchmen. Right? Because now there's no need for masks anymore.
Well, you know what? They did have a scene. I noticed it was a very brief scene in the next episode where one of her kids,
Topher,
is looking at the Sister Knight costume.
Yeah.
Like, he's looking at it, and it kind of gives you the hint. Okay, well, is he going to be like the next generation that's going to take up wearing the mask?
Yeah, that, or I just thought it may have just been like he understands.
Okay.
Or like maybe he always suspected something about her.
Well, see, again, we go back to the brilliance of the writing in this is because you can look at that scene and you can interpret it in a bunch of different ways. Right. And none of those ways are wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And when she's gearing up, John is just watching her and she says, what is it? And he's like, this is the moment that I fell in love with you. And she just kind of remarks, like, we've been together 10 years, and you just realize that now.
Yeah, and you just realize that now, yeah.
But for him, it's not because it's so. When you try to think about how that must be like to perceive all of time at once like that.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's one of those concepts that, as I said, if you sit and you actually do think about it for too long, it'll drive you crazy. Yeah. Because how can you comprehend everything that's going to happen? And if you know what's going to happen, why don't you change what's going to happen? But Dr. Manhattan never does that. He never changes what he says. Well, this is how it's supposed to. It's supposed to turn out this way. Yeah, but you're going to die. Yeah, but that don't matter. I've set everything up so that everything will turn out the way it's supposed to turn out.
Yeah.
And which may be a commentary in itself on Christian faith, whereas the people who are associated with Dr. Manhattan have to take everything that he says on faith.
Exactly.
Because they don't know how it's going to turn out. He does.
And also,
so they just have to trust him when he says, listen, I know how this is going to turn out. It's going to be fine.
Well, speaking of that commentary on Christian faith, that's a good segue into what I wanted to mention is the flashback to when John was a child, right? We find out he was a refugee from Germany, and that his father was of Jewish descent, and they go and they're staying in this manor as where they're staying kind of like as on the way to going to America. Yeah. And the Lord and Lady, he finds them. He's like snooping around the house, and he ends up in the room, and he sees them starting to have sex. And they open the door, and you find out that they look just like Phillips and Crookshanks.
Phillips and Crookshank, right? Yeah.
And they tell him, what you saw was us creating life, which may also have something to do with the fact that he's horny all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Bingo. There you go.
And they give him a copy of the Bible, right? And he's like, well, Father doesn't believe in this. And he said, well, that's okay. These are still beautiful stories, even if you don't believe in them, which is true. That's how I've always looked at the Bible myself, being an atheist.
Okay.
So I thought that was a nice little thing in there. And then they tell him, look, in exchange for the Bible, we want you to make us a promise, that you will go out and you will make something beautiful. And that could be why he's horny all the time. It's like that's the biological need to try and create something.
And as we see, that stuck with him even when he was changed into Dr. Manhattan, because he made a replica. Well, he didn't even make it. He transported, because Angela even asked him, she said, well, why didn't you just make a castle? Why did you transport the castle from Earth over there? And now we see why, because it has an emotional connection for him.
Yeah.
As when he created life, he created them in the image of Crookshanks and, Phillips.
Yeah.
And so also, apparently, that did have a strong emotional connection for him.
But see, he can't seem to get it right. Because like every time he tries to create something beautiful, he's never satisfied with it. Like there's the giant clock tower he created on Mars. Then he goes to Europa and he creates life and he gives birth to Phillips and Crookshanks. But something is still missing for him. There's something that's still escaping him. And he's not satisfied with it. And that's why he goes back to Earth.
Which is the ultimate tragedy of Dr. Manhattan, because here it is, a man who has become God. He can literally do anything he wants. He lives in time simultaneously, but it doesn't mean anything to him.
Yeah,
because he cannot create anything that's lasting. That means something to somebody else.
Yeah, and then in the present day, they get attacked by the 7th Cavalry, and they do a great job, like, fending them off. Like, Angela's just cutting loose with that assault rifle, and then Dr. Manhattan comes in and just, like, blowing people up left, right, and center.
Oh, yeah. He's blowing heads up, and she just capping guys left and right. Bam, bam, blah, 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 blah. And you say, okay, well, they're going to come out of this one. They're going to win.
Right, and then there's one left, and he fires a tachyon cannon, and that's
which Dr. Manhattan knew he was there, because he apologizes to Angela before the guy blasts him.
Right,
because he knew that the guy was there. He said, "Listen, this is supposed to happen."
Yeah, and this is also the one post-credit scene we have in this episode.
Yeah.
And apparently they did it because they didn't want to break up the flow of the episode, so they put it afterwards, and it's The game warden comes into Veidt's cell and he brings him the anniversary cake.
Another damn anniversary cake. Oh my God, which he hates to death.
Yeah, and the warden tells him that he was the first Phillips and he saw Dr. Manhattan create the world. So and then he leaves them. And there's the horseshoe baked into the cake, which earlier on, right, they gave him the horseshoe, and Veidt said, I don't need it yet.
Yeah, I don't need it yet, yeah. But now he needs it, and he starts using it to, apparently to dig out a tunnel.
Yeah.
He's using the horseshoe to dig a tunnel, yeah.
All right, so that brings us to the last episode, the series finale, See How They Fly. Now, this is where we get the origin story of Lady True.
Yeah. Like I said, these last 3 episodes, like I said, one thing that I liked about it's a lot of beginnings that we get in here, even though it's all wrapping up everything. But we also say, okay, now I see how this ties into what we get, and the origin. That's kind of messed up. I'm sorry.
That was and this is also something that it proves Rorschach's theory wrong, right? Because remember, Rorschach had that theory about Veidt being a homosexual, and which then they played up in the movie, which I talked about before, with Veidt having like a folder labeled like boys porn on his computer, and he's also at like Studio 54 and all that stuff. But here, Veidt says, "No, I've never been with anyone." Right, I'm celibate.
Probably because he doesn't think he's found anybody worthy enough to bear his child.
Right. Well, he says that like Alexander the Great, which is kind of ironic because Alexander the Great was also pretty gay himself. But he says, I don't indulge in hedonistic activity.
But as we see, he does have a secret stash of his own sperm, locked away in his office. What is that all about?
Yeah, I mean, this guy's got some real, and he keeps it behind a portrait of Alexander the Great, no less.
Yeah, okay, right. So make of that what you will. So Lady True's mother, she knows where it's at. Mm-hmm. And, apparently, Veidt got all of these Asians. Don't ask me why. They never explain it. But it seems to be that he has exclusively Asians working for him at his Arctic lair / fortress / home.
Well, that comes from the comic book, because all his servants in the comic, they were all Vietnamese refugees.
Oh, okay.
And he had done that because he had felt like the U.S. government had betrayed them, had given them the short shaft, so he's giving them these jobs and opportunities. That's why he was doing that.
Oh, okay. cool. So while he's making the tape where he's explaining his master plan to Robert Redford, who isn't the president yet, but he's telling him, well, I'm making this, and 8 years from now, you'll be the president. Right. How do I know you'll be the president? Because I'm going to work things out so that you will be elected president.
Yeah.
Lady Truth's mother goes in there. She gets a tube of, Adrian's sperm, slabs it up the old hoo-ha, and, and bam, 9 months later, Lady Truth.
And this is something, and when she types in his password in the computer, like, this is something that I hate they do in movies, and I can't fault the TV show for doing it because they did it in the comic too, where his password is just Ramses 2.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just like, come on. You're the smartest man in the world. Can't you think throwing some additional symbols in there or something? Make it a little harder to guess?
Yeah. Don't you use like a password manager?
Yeah. That's one of the things that drives me crazy when I see that happening in movies.
But have you ever noticed that, and they always do that with people, they have to figure out a password, and they sit there for like 30 seconds, and then and bam, that's the pass, they can figure out something. I mean, come on, really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you would expect that the smartest man in the world would have a better password. Right. Especially one that somebody cracked before.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, but it is what it is.
And
moving along.
So then Europa, he uses the horseshoe to escape, and there's a spacecraft, and we find out that what he's been doing when he goes to the moon and he deposes he's been arranging the dead Phillips and Crookshanks there.
Yeah. He's
been arranging them into a message. Like we saw before, we saw save me, but we didn't see the last part, which is save me daughter.
Save me daughter, yeah.
And in the past, sorry, go ahead.
No, because I was thinking when we just sort of saved me, I was saying, well, who was he talking to? Dr. Manhattan?
That's what I was wondering too, yeah.
Yeah, I was saying, well, who was he talking? And then when we finally see the last word, and even when, he gets back, he even says to them, well, you know what? That's the reason why I rescued you, because, you did finally acknowledge me as being your daughter. She said, that's the only reason why I rescued you.
Right, because...
Which I thought was kind of touching, actually.
Well, because in 2008, she goes to Karnak to visit him. And she says that she learned that he had stopped, that what he had done, that he had set the squid. And she tells her, I'm your daughter, or I'm sample 274, or whatever it is.
Yeah. She's...
And she says, and I know he's on Europa because I launched a probe that detected his energy signature there. And I've launched another one that it's going to arrive at 2013 on this specific day at this specific time, and that's when it's going to capture an image of him on Europa. And that's why he's there, and he's looking at the watches, because he wants to be there at that specific time when he knows the probe will be flying over.
Yeah, he wants to. That's why he kept looking at the time, because he knew that the probe was going to be there at that specific time. Right. And then he said, okay, everything's got to line up. I said, oh, wow, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. And so then he sends the spacecraft there and save me daughter, because he says, I will never call you daughter. And he tells her, like, I built everything by myself. You have to build it all by yourself too. And then she goes and does it.
Because she asked him, she said, I was hoping you'd give me a loan of $40 billion or something like that, She said, because she, something she wants to build. I was hoping you'd give me a loan. He said, no. He said, listen, if you're really my daughter, you'll go out and you'll make it yourself.
Yeah.
Which she does. She goes out and she says, yeah, okay, well, okay, screw you, daddy.
Yeah. Oh, also, there's a little hint, because remember in the last episode when he's talking to Dr. Manhattan and he says, you've been on Europa. And Dr. Manhattan asks, how did you know? And he says, a little elephant told me.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
I only picked up on that this second time around. And so she sends a ship to go retrieve him. And he gets encased in gold for the return trip. And they even say, like, put your hands on your hips and everything.
Right, yeah. So he'll be in that pose when, and then that's when we realize, oh shit, well, he's been in the show all the time.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the statue in previous episodes, but we just didn't know that actually was him. Mm-hmm. We thought it was just a statue. And you would say, well, why does she have a statue? Which is why it didn't surprise me when we find out that she's his daughter, because I said, well, yeah, she's got to be, Adrian's, daughter. I figured that, like all along, but I just didn't figure that actually was him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then back in the present day, they revive him. And she says, like, we have to get you changed. And he's like, what's wrong with what I'm wearing? He's like, well, it's a little bit too dated or something like that. It's not suitable for an old man.
She said, I brought you something a little bit more suitable for a man your age.
Yeah. Which is also what I was saying before about how, like, the need for masks is kind of gone now, because the clothes he's wearing, it still has the Ozymandias symbol on it.
Yeah. But there's nobody through like these last 3 episodes, nobody wears any masks.
With the exception of Looking Glass, because he's disguised. That's because he's disguised as 7th Cavalry still.
Well, yeah, he's disguised, but since it's not his actual mask,
right?
I say, okay, well, he's not even wearing his own mask anymore. You know,
he doesn't even wear he's done with the reflective tape.
Yeah, exactly. Because he knows the truth now.
Right, yeah. So the need for masks is being stripped away. Oh, also, this is something else I wanted to mention, but the game warden tries to stop Veidt from leaving. And then Veidt, takes him down, and he says to him, he stabs him with the horseshoe. And the game warden asks him, why did you have me wear a mask? And he says, because masks make men cruel.
Yeah.
And he says, well, was I a worthy adversary? And he says, no. You weren't.
I said, damn, you couldn't have left the guy with that at least.
I know, he's like, but you were entertaining.
Yeah, some cold, man. I'll say that's some cold shit, man. You could at least let him die with the illusion of, was I worthy adversary? He said, no. Mm.
So then they captured Dr. Manhattan. They transport him into this cage, this is what we find out why they were stealing all those batteries. Because the cage is made out of lithium.
This is when a lot of the whole things that have been going on, because we've got Joe. He shows up, he's unexplained the whole master plot of, Cyclops, because the whole leadership of Cyclops has come to watch the transfer of energy from because that's the whole plot. They captured Dr. Manhattan. They're going to take his energy, transfer it into Joe, and he's going to restore the white race to the glory and power that they once knew.
Yeah. And you notice the mistake he made is he explained his master plan before he did it.
Yeah, bingo. Bingo. Never explain your master plan before you do it.
Right. And then, he gets into the booth planning to transfer Dr. Manhattan's power into himself, but they didn't know about what the safety measures are needed. So when Lady True shows up and she opens the door, it's just like he's been liquefied.
Yeah. And even before that, Angela had showed up before and she tried to warn him. She said, listen, she knows, she's got you figured out left, right, front, and center. Lady Truth knows what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And Joe was saying, bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about. She said, look around. Look at the batteries. Where'd you get them from? Oh, well, we stole them from her. I said, yeah, because she wanted you to steal them.
Yeah.
You dumbass. And Joe said, please, you're black. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to become Dr. Manhattan. Just sit over there, just stand over there and watch me become God and rule the world.
And then he ends up getting liquefied as a result.
Yeah, so Lady True opens up the thing that, the booth that he's in, and all he is just liquid that comes out. She said, dumbass.
Oh, and also, I love the scene with him and Lori, because when he takes off his clothes and he's wearing, like, the Dr. Manhattan Speedo from the comic book.
Yeah.
And she's like, you look ridiculous in your panties.
Yeah, and he tells her that the whole reason why he had her come down there was that she had a relationship with Dr. Manhattan, and he wanted to watch her, and he wanted her to watch it, watch the whole thing happen. That's the only reason why he asked her to come down to investigate.
Right.
So he was a sadistic bastard that had to go.
Yeah. And then Lady True arrives and she vaporizes all of Cyclops.
Oh, I love that scene where she's reading the message that because Will has given her a message that he wants her to read to them. And basically it's him saying, yeah, well, you've been torturing and killing and raping and, people of color for all of these years. And June Crawford says, oh, whoa, stop, hold on. Lady Two says what? She said, listen, I don't want to hear this bullshit. If you're going to kill her, just kill her. All right? You have a lot of people be interrupting master plans in this, when people try to explain their reason for why they're doing it. You have a lot of people that say, listen, I don't want to be bothered. If you're just going to kill us, just kill us and get it over with. And she's dead serious because you see she closes her eyes and she starts praying. Her lips are moving. She's praying. She's like, yeah, let's get it over with.
Yeah. And also, Laurie does that to Keen in the previous episode, too, when he starts explaining his plan. Like, she also, she says, like, I'm done hearing about all these plans.
Yeah, she said, you know what? I'm just tired of this. And that's exactly what she said. She said, no, I'm tired of all this bullshit. Mm-hmm. She said, I've been listening to this for years now,
And then as the Dr. Manhattan finds a way to still use his powers. So the blood that was Senator Keene ends up flowing, and you've got Looking Glass, Laurie, and Veidt are all standing in it, and then it flows over within reach of Dr. Manhattan. He touches it, and he transports them back to Karnak. And then she's like, well, why did they transfer us here? And then Veidt says, well, it's because we're going to save the day.
Yeah, he said, which in a nice little thing, you see Looking Glass with vomits, which before, apparently Laurie has gotten used to teleportation because she used to be the one that vomited all the time.
Right, yeah.
So apparently teleportation doesn't bother her anymore.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It's Looking Glass that vomits. Yeah. Because this is the first time it's ever happened to him.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know what else I noticed too in the last episode, or actually, I think it was this episode too. It's this episode when True goes to visit Veidt, and this is why he's so upset that he hasn't been acknowledged, because he says Robert Redford won't return any of my phone calls because he sent him the message, and it's like he refuses to work with me.
Right.
So this is why he feels this is what he was hoping for. Is he was hoping that he could usher in a new age with a new president, and he could work with him to create a better world. But even though he hoped to get Redford elected, Redford's like, nah, screw you.
Well, yeah, because Robert Redford doesn't want to work with a mass murderer.
Right, yeah.
As we're reminded of numerous times in this episode, this man killed 3 million people.
Yeah.
That's brought out a couple times and leads up to, the ending, which we'll get to in a minute. But we get to the scene which is one of the biggest callbacks to the original Watchmen, the comic book, where Veidt does indeed save the day again with squids.
Yeah. And this ties back, and it shows that the baby squids he's been dropping on in random places, it wasn't just they had a story reason for that. It beyond just him trying to keep people cognizant of extra dimensional threats. And that's how they're going to end up saving the day. Is he tells Looking Glass to alter the temperature so they'll freeze. So then when the squids fall, it'll be like a Gatling gun falling over Tulsa.
Yeah. Because Lady True now, she's got her own device for stealing Dr. Manhattan's power. And she's in it. And, she's getting ready to, and Veidt says, well, no, we can't let her have that power. I said, well, what do you mean? Why? He said, because she is a raging narcissist and she's going to use that power, for her own ends and stuff like that. And he said, well, how do you know? Well, trust me, I know. He said, because I'm one.
Yeah. He
said something basically like, it takes one to know one.
Yeah,
he said, if I had...
He says it in Latin first, and then he says the translation, it takes one to know one. I love that.
Yeah. He said no. He said once she has the power, he said trust me, she's gonna go batshit on us.
Yeah,
We gotta, we have to take her out, and that's what he does. Is this massive hail of frozen baby squid?
Right. Which it's funny because earlier in the episode, Lady True says it's a rerun. Right? You're not doing anything original. And then it's the rerun that it's the nostalgia that ends up killing her.
Yeah, nostalgia kills her. Yeah. Yeah. Because, and I mean, I just love the symmetry of that Adrian Veidt. Once again, he saves the world by using squids.
Yeah.
It's like, this is his thing. If there's squids around, look for Adrian Veidt.
and then that first one falls, right? And Lady True feels them. She's like, and she raises her hand, and there's a hole right through her hand.
Yeah. And she knows, and she said, shit.
Yeah, and then they just come raining down. And then Angela runs for cover, and she eventually gets to the theater where Will is, and the kids are all sleeping there. And he says they were pretty much knocked out, like, as soon as they were teleported in.
Yeah. They probably just threw up and fell out.
Yeah. And then...
And Will explains like the whole thing that how him and Dr. Manhattan, when he came to visit him, that he had told him that this was how shit was going to work out. And, and him and Angela, they come to some kind of, understanding. Let me put it that way.
Oh, something else I wanted to mention is when Dr. Manhattan teleports the other three away, but he doesn't teleport Angela. And then she says, why didn't you teleport me too? And he says, because I don't want to be alone when I die. Like, that was just, that killed me watching that scene.
Yeah. Because you know what? Again, going back to what you were saying earlier, which was a very good point, was that the one thing that he couldn't do was create love.
Yeah.
And that's why he was always looking for it. And even though this was the guy with the power of a god, he still wanted somebody to be there at the end.
Yeah.
And he did, which was very poignant. It was one of those moments where you say, oh.
Yeah, I mean, and Mateen, he's such an amazing actor. He sells this. The way he balances that between like the inhumanity of Dr. Manhattan, but he still gives him this kind of vulnerability. Like, I don't know how he does it, but it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those performances that will not be acknowledged when it comes time for the Emmys, which is a shame because this was a TV series that was full of nothing but Emmy-worthy performances.
Oh, yeah.
From everybody. This was like, forget about it. You know what? Nobody in this show was phoning it in. Everybody gave it their A game.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
Without a doubt. They gave it their A game. Nobody was phoning this in.
Mm-hmm. And then back in Karnak, Looking Glass says, you're coming, he says, you killed 3 million people. And Laurie's like, yeah, you're coming with us, Adrian. You're under arrest. And he shows them the way to get back is he kept Archie, the airship from the original graphic novel.
Yeah, he still had it.
And she says, he's like, no, you can't arrest me. You have no evidence. And Looking Glass has the disc of his recording, his confessing to Robert Redford.
And there's a nice little moment where Looking Glass, he realizes that Laurie knew about it too.
Yeah.
Where he says, wait a minute, you knew about this shit? You knew he killed all these people? Mm. Because Adrian said, well, you done kept the secret all these years. Now, why all of a sudden you got a conscience? And Looking Glass looks at her and says, wait a minute, you knew about this?
Yeah. And then when she arrests him, and he says, like, oh, you can't arrest me because the world is going to end if you do. And then she says, yeah, people keep saying that, but the world's still around.
Yeah. She said, oh, man. She said, you know what? Yeah. Said, everybody keeps saying that. Mm. But,
I love Jean Smart's performance in this. Like, she's just got this don't give a fuck about anything anymore attitude throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, because you know what? She's done seen it all. She's done been through it all. And it's like, nothing can surprise her anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, which is why I like going back to that scene where, like I said, where June Crawford, one-ups her. Mm-hmm. That's like the first time we ever seen her where she's not, sure of her footing.
Also, did you catch the look on her face when Manhattan was teleported inside the cage?
Yeah.
Like, I love that. It's such a subtle performance. Like, the look she has, it's like this look of it's like this mixture of like fear and like regret and all these emotions like mixed together. And
there's like five, which again, going back, Jean Smart, if you had ever told me that there was this kind of performance in her, but she's turned into, in recent years, like I said, I saw her, she was on a season of 24, and there was something, she's turned into a hell of a dramatic actress.
Yeah, she was also in Legion.
Right. And in that scene, as you said, you see about 5 different emotions on her face all at the same time.
Yeah. I don't know what she had to dig up to get that kind of reaction, but it worked so well. Like I didn't even notice it the first time. And it's so funny because her and Cal, when Cal is Dr. Manhattan, well, even as Cal too, like we never see them interact at all on screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we know that she interviewed him. But we never saw that.
We hear about the interview, but we never see it.
Yeah.
Which I think, which probably would have been, okay, that was a good idea, because if we had seen it, we would have said, well, how come she didn't pick up on something that he was, Dr. Manhattan? Because she picked up on it if anybody else would.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good idea that they never showed us that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really great way to do it. And then Angela, they go back to her house and she lets Will use the guest room. And he says to her, he was a good man, but considering everything he could do, he could have done more.
He could have done more, yeah.
Which was the criticism that Lady True also had of Dr. Manhattan as well. And you know what? To their credit, they're both right. And then she's cleaning up the eggs and she sees there's one left. And she remembers that he told her that he can transfer his powers into an organic medium like an egg. And this is where everything, the chicken, the egg thing, all of this, it all comes together. That's what it's all been building to. And when he said, I have to walk on water so you'll understand for later.
Uh-huh.
So then she goes out to the pool. She rolls up her pants. She cracks open the egg. She eats it raw. And then it's a close-up on her foot just as it's about to touch the water. And then it cuts to black.
And then boom, that's it. Perfect ending.
Perfect. And I saw so many people getting annoyed by that ending, saying like, oh, I wanted to see her turn blue. I wanted to see her walk out. No, this is the perfect ending.
Maybe she didn't. Maybe she fell in the water.
Right. But I like that they left it open like that.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's because, as you know, a lot of people don't, but, I grew up watching movies during the 70s and 80s. Mm-hmm. And a lot of movies in the 70s and 80s, that's how they ended.
Right.
They let you say, okay, well, it just ended, and let you figure out what happened afterward. It wasn't no need for you to have a sequel or anything like that. They just said, well, you figure out, what happened. And I think that, that this was the perfect ending for it. We did not have to know if you want to believe that Angela got the powers of Dr. Manhattan, fine. If you don't want to believe she got the powers of Dr. Manhattan, that's fine too.
One of my favorite endings of any TV show ever was the ending of Angel. Right? When they're standing up against this horde of demons advancing on them, and they're like, what are we going to do? And he's like, well, we're going to fight. And he's like, and I kind of want to slay the dragon. He just says, let's go to work, and then boom, cuts to black before the epic battle. Because that was the whole theme of the show, was you never stop fighting for redemption.
Right.
So they go out still fighting.
And that's it. All you see is that them charging this horde that's coming at them, and they just charge it, and then that's it. And then it's up to you to figure out, well, what happened? Yeah. Did they all die? But again, like you said,
I mean, we did get a comic book sequel, but still, as far as the TV show goes, that ending was the perfect way to end it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm a big believer in ending things and letting me figure out what happened. Mm-hmm. I don't need for everything to be tied up in a neat little bow.
Right.
And as we were saying earlier, I don't need for everything to be explained to me. I don't mind an ending like this where it deliberately said, okay, well, I don't know what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
And I know a lot of people were pissed off by the ending. They were saying, yeah, and then people say, oh, yeah, well, they just left it open for the sequel. Well, from what I've heard, no, there's not going to be a sequel.
No, yeah.
Not to this, yeah.
And also there's some interesting comments. So, the fact that Lady True and Will, they both said that, Dr. Manhattan could have done more. He should have done more with all his powers. And then you've got, so this is something I thought was interesting, was in the original graphic novel, God was a white man, right? He was a product of the nuclear age. Now, in this new world, God is a black woman. And she's a product of a century of racism and persecution and all this. So what is she going to do with that power? What is she going to do now that she has that power? How is she going to change things? It's a really interesting question mark to leave on the end of this series.
And I really like, like you said, that Will and both ladies who said that, yeah, with all of his power, he could have did something. To me, was a commentary on superheroes, period.
Right.
Because sooner or later, that's something that we always ask about any super. Well, you could have did more with your. We always say, okay, well, Bruce Wayne, is Bruce Wayne really doing any good for Gotham City by dressing up as a bat, going out and beating up people at night? Wouldn't he do more good putting his money in the social programs and stuff like that, and stuff? Superman, wouldn't he do more good? Changing deserts into gardens of Eden, so people can eat and stuff like. There's always that question with superheroes that, well, why are you just beating up on other people? Why aren't you using your powers to actually help some and actually change the quality of life for people in the world, which is what Dr. Manhattan could have done.
Yeah.
He could have turned the whole planet into Eden. Yeah. But he didn't do that. That's how I took that sentence, which to me, was very good.
And like Lady True says, he could have eliminated all nuclear weapons. He could have scrubbed the air clean. He could have done all these things that he never did. So yeah, that was just a brilliant way to end the finale. And I thought everything about this series from beginning to end, there is not a dull moment in this show. Like, it's okay. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it other than that. How about you? Do you have any other?
Listen, there are a lot of TV shows that I've seen and that I can pick apart and say, and even ones that I like, I can point to like 1 or 2 episodes, or say, well, I didn't like this episode, or I didn't like this season, or I didn't like that. I think that this was a masterful story that was obvious that this was planned from start to finish, because there wasn't anything wrong. I'm serious. There isn't anything, maybe because I'm not that type of person. I was supremely overjoyed that this was as good as it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, everything is planned out so meticulously. And also, like you said, like, there is not a bad performance in this bunch. Everybody is bringing their A game to this show.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole notion, first of all, it was an audacious idea to do a sequel to Watchmen, the comic book, the actual comic book, and not, and not the movie. But by pushing it forward, 30 years and dealing with an entirely new set, because as you said, when we started doing this, you couldn't go back to the Cold War thing. That was the thing that drove that series, the original. But for this, it had to deal with what's going on now. And the racial issue is one that is, paramount among other things that's going on. And I think that it was, you said it right. It was downright ballsy of the creators. I mean, to do this, to go that route with the series.
Yeah. And, hats off to Lindelof for having the guts when HBO asked him if you wanted to do a Watchmen series to say, I don't want to do an adaptation. I want to do a sequel to the comic book. And hats off to HBO for saying, okay, we're going to take a chance on this.
Yeah. They were gutsy to do this, I mean, listen, they got my subscription. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm. And I think it goes to show as well that, studios should not be afraid to take risks like this because, because you think about this show and it was a big risk to do a sequel to a comic book that had already gotten a movie adaptation, but not to be an adaptation of the movie, right? Not to be a sequel to the movie. And then you think about all the stuff in here with race and all the hard questions it's asking. And you also look at things like Black Panther, taking a chance on Black Panther when for decades people were saying Black Panther would be too unbelievable for movie audiences. To the point that even you, as a black man, were betting people $10 every chance you got that you'll never see that movie. And then taking the chance on Wonder Woman,
every chance I said we'll never see. That's we traveled this long to make a Black Widow movie.
Yeah. And and it shows that we can take these chances. And you know what? As long as you put your effort into it, it's better than just trying to phone in another Terminator sequel or whatever.
Well, you know what? One thing that I found, and this goes for white and black audiences both, so I'm not just trying to single out one. As much as people always complain and cry and whine and bitch and moan about some Hollywood doesn't come up with something new or something different, and different, nobody wants to see it. Basically, people want to see the same old thing. They do. I know a lot of y'all are saying, oh, Dirk doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, they do. A lot of people basically want, why else do we keep getting, you say, Terminator sequels? Nobody wants to see Terminator anymore. At least I don't. But then you get something like this that is fresh and bold and audacious and take chances. Probably couldn't have been done in Hollywood. First of all, because of the scope of the story, Something here, take this money, go make what you want to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
And I think it's a gamble that paid off. I definitely think it's a gamble that paid off because, except for those few people that we hear that of course, got to change everything and make everybody black. You hear that. And, I've heard it, and I say, okay, well, you know what? I know where they're coming from. I had a couple of people that was say, well, why did they have to change everything and make them, and make right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember. Why are you asking me this?
I was getting an argument with someone on Reddit who was saying like, well, why did they? How can he change himself black? How can he make himself black? That doesn't make any sense. He didn't have that power. I'm like, he can make copies of himself. He can alter matter on a subatomic level. You think he can't change his skin color?
One of the things that cracked me up about, you remember when the Thor movie first came out, and there was such a big thing about Idris Elba playing Heimdall. Mm-hmm. Well, that's ridiculous. Well, why is it ridiculous? Well, they're supposed to be Norse gods. Well, no, in the movies, they never say that. They never specifically say that they're Norse gods. They say they're an extraterrestrial race that were worshipped.
Yeah, they specifically.
By the Norse.
Yeah. Darcy specifically says, like, a primitive culture like the Vikings could have seen them as gods.
Exactly. But they never exactly said that. That is in the movie, or so they can be anything they want to be. Why couldn't they be, So, but, people do have their hang-ups, and I understand that. And all I can say is that, what I'm certain levels of our society have evolved to the point where you can have a story like this and people can accept it for what it is, as exploration of the imagination, and take a story into a new direction, which is what you're supposed to do, which is why stories become legends and they keep getting passed on from generation to generation, because each new generation adjusts the story and makes it fit to suit their their mindset and where the society is at that moment in time, which is what this series is. It's about where we are in this moment, 2 or 3 years, dealing with something else that's going on with society then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this,
if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And I think you're absolutely right. Like that, whenever there's a remake of something, like the ones that do the best are the ones that find a way to adjust the story for the new audience, right? So like that's one of the reasons why I say like and I talked about this on Japan on Film when I talked about compare the two versions of The Ring. There's the Japanese version and the American version. And I'd always wondered, why is it that the American version is a pretty good remake, but all the others, these other remakes of Japanese films, even ones that were made by Japanese directors, are terrible. And then I watched them back to back after living in Japan. And I realized the reason is because it's the same story, but they changed it to suit an American audience. They made conscious effort to appeal to that audience. And by doing that, by changing the story just in that subtle way, they're able to make it to appeal to a whole different set of people.
Yeah, you had a lot of people watching Watchmen that would have never been interested in it before if it hadn't been for the subject matter and the casting.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, you had Joy Reid was talking it up on her morning show. Joy Reid doesn't read comic books.
Oh, Joy Reid's a geek.
Well, I don't think she's that big of a comic. I don't think she's someone who has been that, maybe with movies and TV show, but I don't think she's someone who's out reading comic books and that kind of stuff.
Well, okay. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, maybe. As movies and TV shows go, oh yeah, she's into that culture.
Right. So that's
like science fiction movies and TV stuff and superhero movies.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. See
that culture.
You see someone like that on a national TV show talking up Watchmen. That's just you don't really and someone you wouldn't expect, right?
No. I was kind of surprised when I found out that Joy Reid was that heavy into, science fiction movies and superhero movies and stuff like that, and fantasy and stuff.
Yeah. All right. So I think
like that. I was kind of surprised when she said about stuff.
Okay. All right. So I think that's about all we have to say. Do you have any other final thoughts about the Watchmen TV show?
Nope. That's it. If I haven't convinced our good listeners by now how I feel about this utterly brilliant, magnificent TV series, I can say. If you haven't seen it by now, you still got time to watch it if you got HBO. As a matter of fact, HBO, because of the HBO, they allowing a lot of people to watch this series. So I think all you have to do is just download the HBO Go app, and you can watch a lot of series, including Watchmen.
Yeah.
If you want to watch it, you don't have to get a, you don't have to subscribe to it. You can watch it for free.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. And if you do want to, it's only I think $20-$30 or something on Amazon or on iTunes. So you can just go buy the damn thing too.
Yeah, well.
All right, so that does it. Our first 3-part series is over now, and that means we're going back to our regularly scheduled format where we switch off with different movies. So it was my choice to do the Watchmen TV show. So Derek, it's your choice to figure out what we're watching next. So what movie are we going to be looking at next time?
I'm going to let you have this one because I really didn't come up with anything. I didn't really think of anything. I don't want to come up with something just off the top of my head. So I'm going to let you have this one too.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I have to come up with it off the top of my head now too. All right. Actually, okay. Here's what I'm thinking. All right. So here's what I'm thinking is, and this came out fairly recently, and I don't know if you've got access to it. Do you have access? If you don't, then I've got a backup. Do you have access to Birds of Prey?
Do I have access to Birds of Prey? What, the movie that just came out?
Yeah.
I might. Is it out on whatchamacallit, digital?
It's out on digital. I'm not sure if it's for rent, but I know it's out on digital because I bought it off iTunes.
Okay, well, let me see if I can find it. If I can't find it, then I'll get in touch with you.
Okay, all right. If you can find it, then next we'll watch Birds of Prey or The Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, because that just came out. We've both seen it. We both enjoyed it. So I think that's pretty timely. Now, if you cannot find that, I've got a backup. So just let me know if you can't find it, and then I'll let you know my backup. And if he can't find it, then next episode, guys, you'll find out. It'll be a surprise, I guess, what our next episode will be then.
Yeah, just tune in now, you'll see.
All right, that does it for us for this week. Thanks so much for listening to us. Head on over to Facebook. We got our Superhero Cinephiles Facebook group. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram, Super Cinema Pod on both. Or you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And also, we've got a Patreon page, patreon.com/supercinemapod. Feel free to come in, become a patron, toss us a few bucks a month so we can keep the lights on around here.
Okay.
All right, that does it for us, and we will see you next time.
And we thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed our first 3-part thing. And if you did, please let us know if you want us to do another one, another 3-part, or if you want to do another TV series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This is Derek Ferguson wishing you, I know we're all stuck at home and we're all trying to get through this, but watch some good movies, read some good books, and be good to each other.
Yep, and this is Perry Constantine telling you the same, as well as wash your hands and wear a mask if you got to go outside. All right, thanks so much, and we will talk to you next time.
Okay, good night. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, or if you have a superhero movie or TV show you'd like us to cover in a future episode, you can email us at superherocinephiles@gmail.com, or you can also visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com. If you like what you hear, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Each review helps us reach more potential listeners. You can also support the show by renting or purchasing the movies discussed, or by picking up our books, all of which can be accessed through the website, as well as find links to our social media presences. The theme music for this show is a shortened version of Superhero Showdown, a royalty-free piece of music courtesy of BesleonStudios.com.